Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, your soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
Hi, I'm back with another episode. And we think that this episode will be very interesting because we're going to be talking about gremlins. And specifically, the question that we'll be asking is, are gremlins encroaching upon your soul? I have a guest, Christi, and she'll be introducing herself briefly, and then we're going to dive right into this topic.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christi Holder. I'm a medical massage therapist. This is something that's very interesting to me. I've been in this program for a while. I'm finding that PQ is really showing up a lot of issues that you wouldn't even think about.
The program is related to positive intelligence, developed by Shirzad, Chamine. We have these unseen elements that come out in our personality and in our interaction with individuals, but we don't even realize these are some gremlins that are coming out, and he calls them saboteurs. We're calling them gremlins here. What we wanted to discuss is the uncertainty and how they kind of flip back and forth and how they interact, but what impact do they have on our soul? Because they do. Let's begin with just talking about gremlins and the types of gremlins that the program that Christi's in. If you want to reach out to me, please do so. But what we want to move into is just talk more actively about these, unseen saboteurs, unseen elements that happen in our work life, in our personal life, in our family life, that happen in our working with friends, as well as in our own minds. They come out. So tell us more.
I can talk about this in several different ways. In my own mind, these thoughts jump into your head when you least expect it. You think it's you, but it's actually a gremlin or a saboteur. When you have a situation that may not have gone well, that's a gremlin that pops into your head, which would be the judge, or it will be a pleaser, or it will be an avoidant. But it will tell you things that are not necessarily true because they're coming out of your head. We don't understand how we set ourselves back because we believe what that saboteur or that judge says. And it's not necessarily true. It doesn't want to lose power, so it's going to tell you, you need me. No, it doesn't. Actually, they hold you back. And that's why we're calling them gremlins. But then on the flip side, your soul side or your sage side says, there's another way to do this. And it's more on a positive side than the negative side. The gremlin's on the negative side. So the positive side, I like to think of an angel. That's your sage, your soul talking to you. On the other side is the gremlin telling you all the negative things. You have to have discernment to understand which is which and which way you want to go.
Yeah. Shirzad says we've been conditioned to these gremlins since an early age. The victim or the pleaser, as Christi's mentioning, or the hyper-rational. And he talks about 9 of them in his program, which is a 7-week program that you can go to become more aware of those gremlins and to know that there's a way out for you to become identifying the gremlins. Christi's been in the program that I gifted to her, to be aware of this. That's where this conversation is coming from. As she's been doing the program and developing this hyperly aware of these gremlins and how the sage, which can be developed within yourself, can gain mastery. This is on Mastering Life's Avengers, to gain the mastery for you to dissolve and transmute or consume some of these gremlins that pop up.
And recognize. It helps you to recognize those gremlins when they pop up. Because for myself right now, when a situation pops up and that gremlin shows itself, it's like, oh, I see you. You trying to sabotage me, because you recognize which gremlin it is. Before, I had no idea. But now that recognition allows me to turn a deaf ear to the gremlin and an opening ear to the sage or the soul that's trying to say, no. There's another way. This is the way to go. This is how it's done.
Yeah, it's as if by going through the program, it helps you create pauses so that it allows you to handle the gremlins when they're coming up, as opposed to being we just do what we do, unaware that these gremlins are also underneath the surface, that is at maybe unconscious or subconscious level, that is now rearing its head when something bad or negative happens, or we have a threat of some kind, and then it's going to come up to try to quote unquote protect you. But in actuality, it really puts a hindrance to your soul and the soul's wisdom, which is that sage, or the soul's uniting with the Christic energy, the Christ values, the Christ awareness that allows you to be able to operate in a different way, in a more conscious and intentional. It is as if you take the high road. What the gremlins like to take is the low road. And the low road really leads into a dead end in terms of conflicts, in terms of getting upset and angry about situations, getting critical of oneself, and, feeling annoyed or feeling shame or feeling bitter or feeling hate or anger or rage, all these types of emotions that are now stirred up by the gremlins that are coming up in your interactions, not only just with yourself, but also with other people and family members, or with your teenager, or your husband, or your partner. These negative conflicts or communication patterns are happening, and you're kind of scratching your head at how do we get here?
Yeah, when you're having a discussion with someone and that person may sound critical to what you have to say, you can also find or figure out what their saboteurs are or where they're coming from, so that you then go into sage mode, so that you don't let what they have to say trigger you or trigger your gremlins. Because that's what happens with arguments. Because when people are speaking, actually, it's not their souls that are speaking. It's the gremlins that are battling back and forth and wanting to overshadow the conversation. And nobody's listening to anybody. So when you recognize that gremlin or that sage, you can say, okay, I see you. Okay, I'm not going to let you take over this conversation.
That's the saboteur. Yeah, the sage is the one who actually is willing to say, not now. We're not going there, as you're making mention of. We're not going down that road. It's a dead end, and we can learn to do something different. When you were saying that, I was thinking about how the gremlins, or what I want to call them, they buddy up with the ego persona. Because the ego persona, as I talked about periodically in the episodes of the podcast, the ego persona wants to be right. It wants to always be in the limelight. It wants to feel superior in some ways. It wants to make sure it's recognized. And so it can pout if it doesn't feel like it's recognized, or it can say something nasty because it's trying to get attention. So there's many different aspects of how these gremlins and the ego persona play off of each other. But what it actually does, it entraps the soul. Because when there is conflict or strain, it creates static for the soul. It creates an inability for the soul to reach you and say, you don't need to do that. You need to do this in a different way. And what the program teaches one how to do is to reduce some of these inner conflicts or these gremlins that are going on, and allows you to be able to listen to that sage or that soul, as you were saying, or that Christic principles that are within you, to be able to guide and help you.
Because sometimes those gremlins can be very loud. And the louder they are, you are not able to hear or listen to that sage part of you, because the gremlin is saying, no. Over here, look over here, not over there. You need me. That's why when you recognize them, it's like, okay, I see what's going on. I don't need to go there. And you're able to listen to what is necessary.
And that's the key that we're all learning how to do. Move out of automatic responses when we feel someone has done an injustice to us, or we have felt that someone has said something critical about us, or we feel that someone has not spoken the truth about us. Then it really does create this reactionary in our emotional self. And so we're off to defending ourselves and realizing that's not the way of the soul. The soul wants you to pause, reflect really quickly, and make a choice of what's going to be the best next move for you. And it's usually not getting into an argument.
When people start talking about you, that victim mentality likes to jump out and say, see, I told you they're talking about you. And the sage is saying, is what they're saying true about you? And if it's not, why am I getting upset about it? Mm-hmm. But that victim's going to keep you upset. Mm-hmm. And it's going to keep you in pouting and mooding and keeping you in all that negativity. Or the soul will pull you out of that negativity. Mm-hmm. And then you'll be able to breathe.
Mm-hmm. It's as if the soul helps you to be able to give you promptings or intuition to move in a different way, because the soul's essence is love, is patience, is harmony, is developing wisdom. To integrate with what Jesus did was to help us to find a higher way of being and living in our life that is more equally balanced than what sometimes these gremlins are. They're really extremes of things. And so we've just talked about some of those gremlins. We talked about the victim gremlin, the people pleaser gremlin, but there are other ones such as the controller, the hyper-rational, the hyperachiever, and the avoider. There are additional ones as well, but the kingpin of all these gremlins is the judge.
And that's the one who gets all the other ones up in a frenzy, because he's like to say, yes, go, you need to go there. He's the orchestrator. He's on top. He's the kingpin. And that's the one you have to recognize, and that's the one you have to quiet the most. Because if you quiet that one, everything else calms down, because now you see them. And the more you see them, the smaller and the quieter they get. For me, when I'm doing this, it's like a game. It's like when it pops up, it's like, no, we're not going there. Okay, I see you. I know exactly what you're trying to do. And I'm not going there. And I allow that stage to come in and say, there's a different way to do this. But for me, right now, it's a lot of fun when I recognize it, because it makes me laugh. It's like, hey, I caught that.
What Shirzad says is sometimes you do a happy dance because you've been able to identify or do something that is exhilarating for you that says, yes, I got it. Because it does. It's something that I've said before in other episodes, is where we put our attention to is where our experience will be. So why not put your attention to developing your soul, developing that wise aspect of who you are, and understanding you're on a spiritual path, and how do you want to stay on that path and not get derailed off the path. And those happy moments that you're doing helps to solidify the neural pathways in the brain that allows you to move in a different way that is in alignment with your soul essence and what it's needing.
So it's a good way to respond to a lot of different situations, and it's enjoyable to do as you do it. When Dr. Judith told me about this program, a sage immediately stuck out there and said, well, you don't need to do that.
That wasn't the sage, that was the saboteur or the gremlin.
Oh, yes, sorry. I got them confused for a moment. But yes, that one jumped out there immediately. Saying, no, you don't need to do that. And gave me excuses of why. Okay? Of why it shouldn't. Well, I don't like the way he's talking. I don't like this and I don't like that. That was a saboteur. I said, I'm going to do it anyway. And then when I started doing it, it's like, oh, that's why you didn't want me doing this. Because you didn't want me to recognize you.
I've said to Christi as well as other individuals, the PQ program, that our saboteurs or gremlins are sneaky. They want to be in control. They want to continue to rule the roost. And that now puts our soul in the basement. Our soul does not need to be in the basement. It needs to be actively involved in our everyday life to help us to master our adventures that come our way as we're living of life. One of the things we have to learn how to do, whether you join a program like the PQ program or do it on your own, is start to observe yourself. Start to observe your inner reactions. See what gets you riled up inside. It gets you annoyed or frustrated, feeling shame or guilt. For those are usually gremlins creating this. Because they're so sneaky, you think it's yourself, as Christi was saying earlier.
But no, it makes a difference in how you respond to people and situations, and allows you to experience those situations differently. So when it comes up, you can say, oh, okay, or apologize to the person you may have gotten angry with because that was not you. That was a gremlin that had gotten angry. So apologize and explain to the person, I was upset at that time. This is what was going on with me at that time. And I'm working on not doing that anymore. Please accept my apology.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so what we're focused on is, are gremlins encroaching upon your soul? And you know what? It is. Our gremlins do encroach upon our soul. And in fact, it puts duct tape on the soul's mouth, if it had a mouth. It can't breathe, it can't say anything, it can't do anything around it.
It makes it get smaller. That stage gets smaller. What we need to do, as we understand this, is we need to work on the sage to get larger so that the gremlin gets smaller. If you do that, then you'll find that you will respond to situations totally different. And it's a freeing situation because now you won't change your body chemistry by getting upset and angry and doing things that you normally wouldn't do. And all that adrenaline that's flooding your system due to the fact that you got so angry. But now it's like it says, hey, we can do this a different way. And keep your body chemistry at a normal level where it needs to be. And that keeps you on an even keel, moving forward, dealing with your situation, dealing with your family members differently, enjoying your family members more, even at work and your work colleagues. And your work colleagues may be getting on your nerves or upsetting you. You have to understand that that may be their gremlins that's an issue, and you're allowing their gremlins to jump onto you. You need to recognize that and say, no. Go back to where you came from, but you're not jumping on me because you see them. And by seeing them, you recognize them, and then that makes them back off, and it makes your situations with your colleagues totally different.
Harmony is the goal, because the more harmonious we are, the more the soul can speak to us and guide us in the direction we need to go. Our colleagues don't know they're engaged in their gremlins. Fuel to the fire by us getting angry or annoyed and upset. Instead, we take a step back. We breathe. An awareness of where your body is, or do what is called a PQ rep that Shirzad talks about. A simple thing as looking intently at that person and seeing them in harmony and love and peace. And you're sending that to them because you've chosen a different path, and you're not going to get engaged in this tit for tat, the anger going back and forth, because as you said, it doesn't help your chemistry, doesn't help their chemistry in the releasing of the cortisol, and doesn't help them in the fight, flight, freeze, or appease, which happens with the cortisol. So it's really not a good situation for anyone. And ultimately, the higher path of learning for the soul, in order for it to get past these gremlins or transmute these gremlins, is to be able to have greater awareness and greater wisdom and a greater ability to make choices that are going to be in the best interest of your soul evolution.
And eventually people are going to notice a change in you. And they're going to say, how are you doing that? That's no longer affecting you. People's attitudes towards you no longer affecting you. What are you doing? How did that happen? Okay? And then that's where you can explain to them and help somebody else understand their gremlins. So it's a nice way of dealing with people and allowing people to deal with you. And then you're showing through your actions how to come up a little bit higher. Because now people are looking at, okay, she was down here, but now she's up here. How did she get there? What step did you take to get you from that place to this place?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think especially people who have issues with anger, they're easy to get angry about things. And so when there's an improvement for the person because they've done this type of program or another type of program that allows them to see those gremlins or see those need for control, it's with one of the gremlins that I mentioned earlier, or the victim, they can identify it now. So it moves them to be able to take off that coat, that heavy coat. You don't need that coat. Your life should be filled with adventure, happiness, contentment, and enjoyment, and knowing we're going to step on our toe once in a while, but we rebound back and keep moving forward and not be caught up with these particular gremlins or saboteurs that are trying to tell us that we are this way, when in actuality, the soul in its growth is always positive, is always trying to look for the good in things, is always trying to attune you to the intuition of your higher self, the wisdom, the wise part of you, the Christic light, the I am presence, the Atman, the creator, how you were created. That's what our striving is towards. What do you think about that?
The beauty of it allows you to come up a little bit higher. But you'll find that, yes, you will stub your toe, you'll slide back a little bit, but you'll bounce back a lot faster because you also recognize, okay, I slipped a little bit. That's because of that gremlin. Oh, you snuck up on me. You can get out of that mood or that depression or that attitude a lot faster instead of sitting in it and pouting in it and wallowing in it. It changes your attitude a lot faster than it would if you didn't recognize it.
Yeah, how true. I think it changes your whole being because it's as if you're not weighed down by these gremlins that are trying to occupy space, that is trying to put a barrier around your soul, be it through control, which is a gremlins I mentioned earlier, or through victimhood or people-pleasing, which we all have some of, and which we have to be aware of when it's coming up, because it does affect the behaviors we engage in. And we, as people on a spiritual path, want to engage in higher behaviors that are in attunement with our own evolution, our own advancement that allows us to move forward. Sometimes we don't think of a gremlin as being a hyperachiever, for example, but it is. So there's a certain amount of behaviors you engage in, and when you're not feeling successful, then you feel like a failure. And that's not true.
That's a gremlin for sure.
Because the soul is never a failure. We can say we don't make the best choices at times, and we can correct those choices. But the essence of who we are is not a failure. And then you have the avoider. So some people want to avoid, and we look at that in terms of procrastination. So we don't engage in certain things because I'm not going to be successful anyway, so why do I do it anyway?
That's a key one, especially when there's something unpleasant that you don't want to do. You try to avoid it, to put it away or put it off as long as possible. But, yeah, that just makes it harder. So, that's a good one. So most people, I find, a victim and not avoider and the pleaser are very highly I think a lot of people are in that boat.
Yeah, I think we can all think about how those types of gremlins do show up in our world and what we can do, be more intentional about so that it allows our soul to be able to fly and allows us to be able to run like a Olympic athlete, allows us to use our creativity in a more powerful way than we would otherwise, because we begin to understand ourselves better. We begin to understand these gremlins that are taking up space. And that space that they're taking up is space we need to allow for our soul to evolve and grow. So think about it. Are your gremlins encroaching upon your soul? When you start looking at your life in an objective way, in your relationship with your partner, your wife, or your husband, in your career relationships, or in family and your personal experiences, situations, or circumstances, look at your energy. Look how your energy goes. And if it sinks and it goes down low, ask, is a gremlin operating here? Because when it goes down low, it means it's suffocating your soul. And you want to lift your energies and you know the life direction and path that you're on is learning, growing, evolving. So it frees yourself. No longer are your gremlins encroaching upon your soul. Something to think about.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.